Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, Joey cut his hand, huh?
Yeah, well, it's the index finger. But I can't imagine 10 stitches in one
10
index.
stitches in one finger?
I know. It was, well, I don't know. He says he doesn't think the people there know what they're doing. He really
I'm
doesn't.
telling you, that's what I'm beginning to think about Condell.
Really.
They don't know what they're doing either.
And I
Hi,
mean, that
Sam.
wait from 9:15 to 3 o'clock. I mean,
Yeah, that's
Jesus.
ridiculous.
Yes, Dave.
What's Feigenbaum's number?
What's Feigenbaum's number? 676-1294.
Could I use this phone? Because I don't want to call on the other phone.
Yeah, okay, I'm moving. Hold
Yeah.
on, I'm leaving.
Okay.
Liz, I'll be right back.
Okay. Hi, Estelle.
Hi, Lois. Hi, Liz.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you all?
I'm good.
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 As well as one can be in under all these circumstances.
I know. Where do we look? Who's this fourth person?
It's Sam, somebody Sam. Yosemite Sam? He's not talking.
Liz, there was Joshua there last night. Was that the guy?
I'm here. Thank you.
Good, Sam, good.
Thank you.
Was that guy who came out?
Jason, not Joshua, Jason.
Oh, Jason, yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's always there.
Oh, okay.
He does some sort of radio work, I think. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, I believe he works for NPR.
Yeah, it could be.
Well, WBEZ. Okay, yeah.
I just texted the rabbi.
Which rabbi? Hey,
Take a
rabbi.
pick.
Hey,
I
Rabbi,
texted Rabbi Karsh.
thank you.
He'll do.
Okay, I'm glad.
He certainly will.
He's probably just lost track of time again.
Oh, stop it. Scam
I hope-
call.
I hope all is all right.
Well, scam calls we don't answer.
How did he say? How is Tippy getting on with her knee repair?
She's
She's still in rehab.
she's having therapy. She's in a rehab place. I don't know how long for.
Yeah, they usually try and throw you out as quickly as possible.
Of
these
course.
days.
Agreed. I know my sister-in-law, I think, was in the rehab place for a week or 2 weeks when she had her knee done.
Oh,
My
really?
neighbor was home and had home
Yes,
therapy.
I think they do that as well. After you've gone out of rehab, they usually send a physical therapist round.
Yeah, that she didn't go to rehab. She stayed home and had rehab done to her.
Oh, well, that's also very nice to do, very good to do.
Yes. But then when she had to go, she wasn't allowed to drive. So she had to Uber
yeah.
to the therapy place.
Yeah, as long as one has somebody at home with one,
Yeah,
you can be at home.
exactly.
therapy
I
is
don't
very
think my cat would
important.
drive me.
I think the therapy is very important to keep
Yes.
up. Very good for I mean, it's essential for good recovery, they say.
Yes. but it's also important to get the correct therapy.
Of
So you've got to
course,
be careful who does it.
that's true. Sure. Oh, well, Moshe, I wonder where Rabbi is.
He has not answered my text.
Oh,
Hmm.
So we wait patient. There he is.
Hi, Rabbi.
Good morning.
Hi, sorry about that.
hi, Rabbi.
How are you guys? Good to hear your voice.
We're
Bella.
good.
Good. Good. Very good. So we are at the end of the Mitzvot Saseh, the positive commandments.
Have we
Morning.
really gone through 240 something six?
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
I know. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Eventually, those steps start to add up. Okay, so we are talking about the mitzvos at this point in mitzvah 246. We're talking about mitzvos that apply to people who are in some kind of financial dispute. And they are in front of a court, and the court is going to determine who is liable and who is in merit. And that is that he commanded us about the law of the claimant and the defendant, and that is his may be exalted and may his name be blessed, saying, for all manner of trespass, of which one can say, this is it. And the language of the Mechilta is, this is it, until he makes a partial admission. And included in this law are all the claims that transpire between people, some of them against others of them, that involve admission and denial. The laws of commandments have already been explained in chapter 3 of Bava Kama and 5 and 6 of Shvuot, and there are also many questions about it scattered in many places. The Talmud in chapter 1 and 8 of Bava Metzia. See Parshat Mishpatim, Mishnah Torah, plaintiff and defendant. So you have two people. One claims that the other one owes him money. And they're now before the court. So there are certain types of evidence which are considered to be substantial right off the bat. So if somebody has witnesses, so let's say in this case, somebody claims the other one borrowed money and didn't pay it back. So he might have witnesses to the original loan. He might have witnesses that he asked for the money and the other guy said he doesn't have it, or he's not going to pay it for some reason. Or even he might claim that there was no such loan, or the loan was for a different amount. So there's witnesses, and witnesses are considered substantial factors. There's also documents. So if somebody has, let's say it was a loan, and he has the loan document and everything's in order, it has a date on it, it names both parties, it stipulates as to the size of the loan and when it's supposed to be paid back, and it's witnessed. Witnesses' names are signed in it. So that's considered a substantial right out of the gate. There are many situations where you don't have witnesses or documents, and then it's going to be up to the court to judge this based on their claims. So there's all sorts of discussion and precedent when it comes to how to resolve something where you don't have witnesses or documents, and you're just trying to determine it based on claims. Sometimes the claim of one will just seem much more reasonable than the claim of the other person. Sometimes one of the claims will trigger an oath. We talked about oaths in the past. So if, let's say somebody claims that he borrowed $100 from me, the other party claims it was only 50. So that triggers an oath. So the person who claimed 50 would now make an oath in the court. If he goes through with that, and he does make the oath in court, then he would only have to pay 50. So it started with just claims. There were no witnesses or documents, but there was something about the claim of one of them that triggered an oath and a kind of resolution. There are some times where one person's claim would trigger or involve a chazaka. In this case, what we mean by chazaka, which literally means to like hold onto something, but in this case, the chazaka is a kind of, we have this, a kind of an established legal reasoning that, for instance, let's say the person said he borrowed $100 from me, and the other one claims there never was such a loan. So there is a chazaka, a legal assumption that somebody's not going to look another person in the eye and said never happened when it comes to a loan. So even though, again, you have no witnesses, you have no document, you just have the claims of two people, but there's certain claims that can trigger a kind of result because there are these devices like chazaka or something called a rove, or a majority of people act in a certain way or do a certain thing, and so if you're going up against a rove, that can the conclusion of the court might be that we're going to side with the party that has the majority with it, majority of behavior with it. There's some kind of claim. Sometimes a person can make a claim that if I wanted to lie, I could have told a better lie. That's called amigo. So let's say in there's a kind of claim that the person would have, if he made that claim, we would have let him walk away from it without having to pay. And so in the case, he gives a different claim, but then he says to us, if believe me when I give the different claim, because if I wanted to, I could have made a claim. In other words, if I was going to lie, I would have made a claim that would have allowed me to just walk away. As long as I'm lying, I might as well lie in a way that gives me the perfect claim. So that's called amigo. So even if there aren't documents to support one side or the other, or there aren't witnesses to support some kind of the other, there could be, just based on the claims that the people are making, there could already be precedents that allow us to resolve the case just based on the claims. There is a responsa of the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, who lived in the 1300s and was an extremely influential halachic commentary scholar. He writes in a responsa that it's the responsibility of the court to come to some resolution. When two people come before you in a dispute, it's the responsibility of a court to come up with some kind of resolution. Sometimes you're coming up with the resolution based on precedents and reason and already established principles. There may even be some times where you don't have those in your case. You're still being urged to find some way to resolve it peacefully, so that when they leave, they feel like this has been, their dispute has been resolved. This is part of, it's understood to be part of the responsibility of sages in general, that they're supposed to bring peace in the world. Tamidei chachamim marbim shalom ba'olam. Sages bring, or add to, or bring more peace in the world. So he was suggesting, sometimes you'll see in the Gemara resolution to cases that seem to be more in the category of a coin flip than they do based on reason or precedent. And he suggests that that's because they are fulfilling their responsibility as sages. Two people are in dispute. We don't want to leave people in dispute with each other. So there's times when the court may resort to some kind of decision making that, and it doesn't seem to be based on reason, because the ones that could be based on reason don't apply. And still they'll be motivated to try to come to some kind of resolution that would lead to a peaceful outcome. Okay. 247. That is that he commanded us to save someone pursued, even though the life of the pursuer, meaning that we are commanded to kill the pursuer, even if we are only able to save the pursued by taking the life of the pursuer. And that is, may he be exalted, saying, and you shall cut off her hand, you shall have no pity. And the language of the Sifrei, by his genitals, what is unique about his genitals? They place his life in danger, hence it comes, and you shall cut off her hand. So in this case, we're talking about, there's a fight. This woman has grabbed the genitals of a man and is threatening to kill him. So even if you have to cut off her hand in order to stop it, you're supposed to cut off her hand in order to do that. This teaches you that you're obligated to save him through cutting off her hand. For where do we know that if you're not able to rescue him through her hand, that you may rescue him with her life? Hence we learn to say, you shall have no pity. Behold, that the content of this command has already become clear to you, and that his saying, capital H, Hashem, the wife of one, was the verse merely speaking with what is common. In other words, the Torah is just giving us an example in that case. It's not talking only in that case, but it's talking about a fight. Then the wife of one of them grabbed the guy by the genitals. She's not letting go, and she's trying to kill him. So, but that's just an example. It's not the only case where this would apply. The intention is to save the pursued through injuring one of the limbs of the pursuer. And if it is impossible to save him without the death of the pursuer, he should kill him at once. The laws of this commandments have already been explained in chapter 5 of Sanhedrin. So this person, the pursuer, the technical Hebrew word for that is a rodef. So once somebody has assumed the role of the rodef, now it is the responsibility of others to save the one who's being pursued. So if you're standing by and somebody is threatening the life of somebody else, and it looks like they really do intend to kill the other person, you are obliged to stop them. And if you can't stop them by any other means, the only way you can stop them is by killing them, then you're obliged to kill them. So this is a kind of Good Samaritan situation, you know, like in quotations. This, we're talking about somebody who's standing by. So let's say you're a photographer and you're watching something unfold. These are scenarios that, you know, have been sort of famously described, where you have somebody in the role of a photographer and he's watching violence occur, and people are horrified that this person is not trying to intervene, and they argue that it's, you know, their role to document this. It's not their role to intervene. You also have peacekeeping troops who are put in situations where they're not allowed to intervene when there's actual clash. They're not allowed to, stop an attack. Once it unfolds, there are situations like that that we read about around the world. That would be considered, according to the Torah, wrong. According to the Torah, a person is obliged to intervene and to stop the attacker, even if it means killing the attacker. One of the situations where this sort of famously is brought up is in the case of abortions, even a late life abortion. If the mother's life is at risk, that is considered a scenario in which an abortion is a mitzvah. It's not just permitted, but an abortion would be a mitzvah. If it's determined, again, that the mother's life is at risk and the baby has not been born yet, the Mishnah considers the baby to be the pursuer in this case, and therefore it's a mitzvah to abort the baby, even to kill the baby, in order to protect the life of the mother. Exactly what constitutes life at risk is a matter of discussion. Is it possible to apply that even psychologically? In other words, let's say the birth would be considered psychologically dangerous to the mother. Again, you'd need some kind of method to determine this, but let's say it was determined in theory that the baby would be psychologically a threat. So there might be circumstances, at least that is considered to be a circumstance that would permit abortions. Again, these are very weighty matters. They're matters of life and death. But whenever the discussion about abortion in a halachic context comes up, this does come up, and again, it's even discussed in the Mishnah. And the foundation for the permit to do the abortion in these cases is that the baby is classified as a pursuer, and the mother, the one who's being pursued. Once the baby is born, then the mother is no longer considered to have a different status than the baby. And so the mother is not necessarily pursued by the baby once the baby is born. And so if you have a partial birth abortion where the head has already emerged and some of the body, at that stage, the baby is no longer considered a pursuer. It's a human being of equal status with the mother. And therefore there's no longer a permit to kill the baby in order to protect the mother. Again, even they're very weighty, and every situation has to be determined. there was a famous case that was written up in the New York Times of a family that had Siamese twins. And it was the determination that both of them will not live. Only, I forgot how they were attached and what they shared with each other, but it's a case, you can Google it, you can find this case. So there they had to determine somehow, because this was a family that had chosen Ramosha Feinstein to decide the law, and the surgeon at the time he eventually became the Surgeon General of the United States. I think the case itself was in Philadelphia, I think. But anyways, they had to determine which to kill in this situation, or if they're even allowed to kill one in order to save the other. And the surgeon deferred to Ramosha Feinstein to give the kind of halachic ruling. And this issue of who's the rodef and who's the pursuer and who's the pursued figured into the decision making, into the determination at the end. They also have these cases in the womb, where sometimes they have twins in the womb, and one of the twins is taking the nourishment from another one of the twins. So they're not going to both be able to live in the womb. And so those are also questions where this question of pursuer and pursued comes up, even in very contemporary conversations. And certainly the cases I was mentioning before, if you're a bystander and somebody's life is at risk, you are being asked to intervene if you can, and intervene with lethal force if that's the only way to stop the other party. These again are not cases where you can just, if you're in the moment with one of these cases where you're witnessing something, you don't get to call a rabbinic authority to ask them what you should do. You have to ask in the moment with, you're the one who's making the judgment of what needs to be done in order to stop this person. And therefore there is certainly leeway. If afterwards everybody thinks, let's say you had a gun and people are saying you could have shot him in the leg, you didn't have to kill him. Those kind of questions, obviously you're the one who makes that judgment, and the courts are going to end up deferring to your judgment in that case, because it's your judgment. This is often the case with police, with fatalities at the hands of police. You see this come up a great deal. There's one of the defenses of police officers is that in the moment, in that split second where they have to make this decision, they believe their life was at risk or somebody else's life was at risk. And in almost every case, it may be every case that has been brought up, that is considered a winning argument, because who knows what how to decide in that moment if you think your life is at risk or somebody else's life is at risk. There are a lot of people who think it's abused, that argument, and that there have been cases where clearly this police officer didn't really believe their life was at risk, but there's no way to really prosecute that. I think it's never been successfully overcome. If the person makes that argument in the moment, I thought my life was at risk or somebody else's life was at risk. And but anyway, so that, and you could understand why, because that is a kind of judgment it's a lonely individual judgment. at the time. Okay. It's sort of interesting, just as a kind of aside, that at the end of next week's Torah portion, you have the story of Pinchas. Do we? Oh no, it's 2 weeks. At the end of Balak, you have the story of Pinchas. But so in the case of Pinchas, the halacha is that Pinchas is in the right and that he's allowed to kill Zimri and Cosby, the two people that he ends up running through with a spear. But the question is, let's say you were standing by and you saw him in pursuit of them. So does the law of Rodef apply? What if somebody stood up and killed Pinchas because he's a pursuer? It just brings up this interesting kind of scenario. It's interesting in theory, not in practice. It's terrible in practice, but interesting in theory, that you could have a situation where somebody's doing what they're supposed to do, but somebody else could be in a position as an onlooker where the person who's doing what he's supposed to do actually is fulfilling the role of a pursuer. And because he's a pursuer, they may be asked to intervene and stop him. So there could be sort of complex situations like that in this discussion. Okay. The last of the positive commandments is the laws of inheritance. He shehoranu b'dinei nachlos. That is, that he instructed us about the laws of inheritance. That is his, maybe about be exalted, saying, if a man dies and he has no son, etc. So that was the daughters of Tzlofchad. In that case, if he has a son, the inheritance goes to the son. If he has more than one son, it's divided amongst the sons. If he has no son and he only has daughters, then the inheritance is divided amongst the daughters. If the person dies and he has no children, then it could be inherited by his brothers, by his father, by uncles. They could end up going to cousins. So the Jewish law of inheritance, which comes, it's based on verses in the Torah, but it's very much expanded. So it is based on the notion that once a person dies, any money they have, any objects they have are no longer that person's because they've died, and now they belong to those who are in the line of inheritance. And included in this law, without a doubt, is that the firstborn son inherits double, as this is one of the regulations of inheritance. All the regulations of this commandment have already been explained in chapter 8 and 9 of Baba Basra, and in Parshas Pinchas, which again is coming in a couple of weeks, Mishnah Torah, the laws of inheritance. So he has this as one law, just one law, the laws of inheritance. That's, I think, why he's saying that the firstborn inheriting double is included in this law. It's one positive commandment. All the laws of inheritance are included in it. There are lots of laws, as you see in the Mishnah Torah. He has 11 chapters on the subject. So this is an example, and so have the last couple been examples where there's lots of law, lots of detailed law, but it's all under one mitzvah. And this is, again, the Rambam had explained to us in his introduction how he's getting to the number 613. We're told that the 613 is made up of 248 negative commandments and 248 positive commandments and 365 negative commandments. So he's telling us how he gets to the number 248 in the introduction, which means sometimes you're going to have an area of law that has lots of detail, but it's still under one mitzvah. And so would be with the laws of inheritance. And you should know that which we said, that their regulations are in place X. Our intention was not that all the regulations of that commandment would be included in that chapter or tractate to the point that no question would remain. Rather, I'm mentioning the place in which there is the main law of the commandment and most of its regulations. However, there will still be questions about the regulations of that commandment that are scattered in many places in the Talmud, but I will not mention their places now. So that's a little bookkeeping, a little housekeeping. And when you now examine all these commandments that were previously mentioned, you will find among them commandments that are an obligation on the community, not on each and every individual, like the building of the temple, the establishment of a king, the cutting off of the seed of Amalek. There are also among them commandments that are obligatory on an individual if he did a certain act or something happens to him, such as a sacrifice for an inadvertent or volitional sin. Among these commandments are also laws like those we explained, such as the law of the Hebrew slave, the law of the Hebrew maidservant, the law of the Canaanite slave, the law of the unpaid guardian, the law of the borrower, and others that were previously mentioned. It is possible that an individual will live all his life and not deal with that mitzvah, and so not be obligated in this commandment. So if you're going to say that by the end of my life, my goal is to fulfill all 248, that's not going to happen, because there are certain ones that are not up to me as an individual to do, or they may be up to circumstances that I never encounter. Also among them are commandments that are only practiced when the temple's in existence, such as the festival offering, the site offering, the commandment of assembly. We've already mentioned each one of these. Among those are also those that are only practiced by someone with property, such as tithes, priestly tithes, gifts to the priesthood and portions of the poor, meaning gleanings, forgotten produce, the corner of alalot and olalot. So the corner is leaving a corner of your field. Olalot is also has to do with produce. Sometimes one will not have these possessions, or it won't be obligated in these commandments. A person could live their whole life and will not become obligated to any commandment of this type. But charity is not included in this, since charity is obligatory even on a person that subsists on charity, as we've explained. And among them are those that are definitely obligatory at all times, in all places, and whatever the circumstances, such as tzitzis, tefillin, and the observance of Shabbos. Now he says tzitzis here, but that's only biblically if you actually have a four-corner garment that you're wearing. If you didn't have a four-corner garment that you're wearing, you are not biblically obliged in tzitzis. The commandments that are of this type are called definite commandments, because they're definitely obligatory for every Jewish man that reaches the age at any time, in any place, and whatever the circumstances. And it would be for Jewish women if they were not considered time-bound.
Rabbi, I'm a little mixed up. What are we talking about now, the last minute or two?
We're talking about he's now gone through a list of all the positive commandments, but he's explaining that as a Jewish male, even though in theory, you would imagine in theory that somebody would strive to do all 248 commandments, but there are a lot of them that a person will never do, because they never come across the circumstances for those, besides the fact that some of them aren't on individuals, they're on on the community. So you start with the number 248, but you're never going to get to 248. No individual is going to get to 248 because of these reasoning. When you examine these 248 positive commandments, you will find that the definite commandments are 60. So he's saying there are 60 positive commandments. If you are a male, there are 60 positive commandments that you should be able to come across. And that is with the stipulation that his situation is the situation of most people. That is, that he lives in a house, in a city, eats the foods associated with the human species, meaning to say bread and meat, engages in commerce with people, marries a woman, and fathers children. Then these 60 commandments, according to their order in which they have arranged, are these. So he's going to go through now some. He's also going to point out to the one that women are not going to be obliged in, but he's going to list the 60 that every person would end up if they're having a kind of average life. There are 60 mitzvahs. I think when I went through a list, it's more likely that it's in the 50. He's saying 60. He has a reason for saying 60. We're going to see which ones he includes in that 60. I would have liked that this person who's doing the commentary actually mentioned the name of the mitzvah, not the numbers. I know he's just mentioning the numbers, but you would have hoped that he would mention it. But like for here, you can see in the middle, only applies to male priests. So if somebody's not a Kohen, then you're not gonna, even some of the 60 are not going to apply. Okay, look forward on Monday. Going on with this little discussion here before we get to the negative commandments, the list of negative commandments. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to learn with you guys, and I look forward to doing it again on.
And we thank you.
Thank
And
you.
hope to see you in the morning.
Rabbi, would
Thank you.
this assume that the 365 negative would apply to everybody?
Well, you could say the same thing. If it's a negative commandment that applies to the community, or it's still, there could be individuals that are not in that scenario. There could be negative commandments also if you don't live during the time of the Beit HaMikdash. If you don't live, there might be negative commandments with the ownership of a slave, but a negative commandment. So they could be situational.
Right.
And so I remember I was there was a young man who I was studying with, and we came up with this project that we would, like birders have these notebooks where they record the different birds that they see. And you might have some that go on trips to certain places just so that they can actually see a specific type of bird. So what if there was something like that for mitzvahs? So in other words, you'd have like a kind of notebook, and you'd try to accomplish as many mitzvahs as you could, even so let's say you don't live in Israel, but you visited Israel. So while you're in Israel, you would take a tithe. Let's say the tithes were biblical. That's a question about that. But let's say let's say there's some kind of tithe you can take now, and you'd fulfill the biblical commandment. So you'd actually go out of your way to actually accomplish a biblical tithe while you were there, shooing away a mother bird. There are actually guides that can take you so that you can experience the mitzvah of shooing away a mother bird. There is the redemption of a firstborn donkey, male donkey. A few years ago in Chicago, they had a whole big thing where they did it. They did the mitzvah in front of everybody so people could see that mitzvah accomplished, because it's a that you wouldn't regularly do, but if you go out of your way to do it, you could accomplish it. So wouldn't it be interesting to sort of have that attitude where you're gonna have your little book where you're gonna try to fulfill whatever mitzvahs you can, even though in your natural circumstances you may not get that opportunity. Okay, I'll see you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Be well.
Get divorced.
Yeah,
You have to include
one
my
that's
favorite.
encouraged. The
You have
Rambam-
to include rebuking your neighbor.
Yeah, things like that. That's true. Yeah, nice. Okay, be
All
well.
right, see you tomorrow.
Okay, be well. Bye-bye.
Bye.